90s sitcom tropes. I mostly agree, though I also wonder if we haven't been convinced that middle class is a lower income bracket than it is / used to be. Basically, a tactic of the rich / owners is to convince the poor they are better off than they really are, so they will accept lower wages / salary. The truth is, you can have a place to live and not be wealthy. Indeed, you may be far from it and legitimately in the lower class income bracket. That bracket goes higher than you've been led to believe. All that said, the 2010 show Girls is bullspit. No way could they afford those apartments. Dude on Roseanne, original run, they were always complaining on how poor they were and always out of work, working poverty wage waitressing and factory jobs, and Dan lost his bike shop because he couldn't afford it. They always were on about how they had no money and were so poor, but that house was fucking huge. 2 stories with a finished basement, 3 to 4 bedrooms and at least 2 full baths, a large kitchen and living room, a 2-car size garage and a separate laundry room. This was one the OC lampshaded to heck. Most of the characters are wealthy, but when the poor girl from a working class family wants to get away from her abusive husband, the wealthy kids just can't comprehend that she can't afford a house. Maybe she could save money by renting for a time, in the numbered streets. Later on, she's living in a day motel trading favors to make daily rent and still telling her ex that she's doing fine and has a small place, in the numbered streets. As someone born in a third world country, where the houses doesn't look at all like that, it amazed me how well Married with Children, Malcolm in the Middle, Full House, etc. lived. Big houses with 2 levels, rooms upstairs, living room, kitchen and laundry in the first one, nice backyards, things like basements and attics. In my country not even rich houses have that. It's not part of our culture, I guess. Honestly, it was so much more possible then though. I really remember back in high school doing a thought exercise on buying a home where I lived, class of 96 over here. And seriously, new homes in the outskirts of the area, around 8 to 10 miles away in an adjacent town, started at about $65, $70K. At the time I worked at McDonald's and I think supervisors made like $8 per hour. And there were some standard jobs, bank teller or similar, that paid like $20,000 a year open to high school grads. At the time conventional wisdom was you could afford a home 3-4x your annual income. So those $65, $70K new construction homes were basically in reach if you were a supervisor at McDonald's or in a basic entry-level office job. Yeah, you might have needed a little bit of help on the down payment or to save up. If you paired up you would have been fine. Or you volunteered for overtime 8 hours a week. And these houses were definitely way nicer than my grandma's house with new appliances and carpet and whatnot. And I lived in a middle of the road priced region at the time. It wasn't spectacularly cheap or anything. If you were willing to live further out, maybe 15 miles, those places were like $50,000. Totally doable and still commutable to a basic supervisor level service job. So it was actually pretty realistic if you didn't live in a big city. But now housing costs are so crazy it isn't remotely fathomable. Growing up and watching Married with Children in front of those often busted up big wooden box enclosed T-verses that always had piles of random crap or other broken T-verses on top in group, foster homes, crummy dilapidated single wides. I was always angry because they made such a big deal of being poor and their lives were 1,000 times better than ours. I thought to myself that being a shoe salesman must roll bank, and that Kelly and Bud were the most spoiled little asshats in the world. Lol. Homer Simpson had a 3-bedroom house with a living room, sitting room, full den and a 1-car garage. He had 2 cars, not great cars, but they got the job done. That was what passed for poor in 1989. And, as an old guy, I can tell you, the show's opinion about socioeconomics of the time is pretty accurate. That's how people thought back then. We had the luxury of thinking that way because the 1% hadn't gobbled everything up yet, leaving nothing for the rest of us. We tried to watch Father of the Bride the other day, and I just couldn't sit through it. It was like the film embodiment of first world problems. The daughter is unhappy that her rich family won't drop a bunch of money on her wedding when they live in like a $10 million mansion. And then there's the elephant in the room. She doesn't think to ask her even wealthier fiancé that she met studying abroad in Italy. Steve Martin is worried that his future in-laws are too poor, then he's upset that they are too rich. I didn't notice until someone pointed it out to me, but the flashbacks in Orange is the New Black are the same way. Like, a character on the ass end of the struggle bus might be seen in an apartment that would go for $2,000 in the 90s. I wonder if it just makes filming easier that way. Sitcoms are definitely the worst, though. Anyone remember that episode of Boy Meets World where Corey and Topanga get cut off by their family and have to live in squalor for 20 minutes? It's just a normal-sized apartment with roaches thrown in for dramatic effect.